Howdy, today on Flippin Science, looking at osmoregulation. Thanks to Sam Moyle for producing this PowerPoint. So the Science Understands we're going to look at, describe the role of antidiuretic hormone, ADH, in osmoregulation, and discuss the links between osmoregulation, blood volume, and blood pressure. So what is osmoregulation? Osmoregulation is the maintenance of water and solutes in the body. So we need to understand how kidneys work. Here's a video, this is a crash course video, I'll link to it in class for you to watch, it's really good as well, but we'll go through briefly how kidneys work. So the nephron on the kidney is an exchange surface, it has a really large blood supply. So blood arrives at a nephron through the afferent blood vessel, an afferent arteriole, I believe it would be. In the glomerulus, there's high pressure blood coming in, and that forces fluid out of the capillary bed inside the glomerulus. So that filtrate goes into this capsule around that called Bowman's capsule, and that filtrate contains water, mostly, salt, glucose, urea, which is a waste product, and a few other bits and pieces, amino acids as well. No large proteins, because large proteins shouldn't be able to fit through the capillary bed. Some of those substances that are filtrate are required by the body, so if we just filtered them out and then lost them straight out through our urine, we'd dehydrate and die pretty quickly. So we reabsorb selectively some of those substances in the filtrate, and we leave waste products to go out to make our urine. So along the convoluted tubule, and we've got the loop of Henle, we've got a descending loop and an ascending loop, and then we've got a distal convoluted tubule, and then we've got a collecting duct. Along here, different substances are reabsorbed from the filtrate so that your blood maintains itself at specific concentrations of things like glucose and salt ions like sodium and potassium and chloride ions, as well as a certain amount of water. Too much water, you need to get rid of some. Not enough water, you need to reabsorb extra water from this process. So you maintain the amount of water in your body. So I've got this little animation that's going through this. So we're in the kidney, so here's our kidneys here. They're a lot lower down than you'd think. The job of the kidneys is to filter the blood, maintain homeostasis in terms of the contents of your blood, and also remove waste products into your urine so that you can get rid of it from your body. We have the cortex here and the medulla. These are the outer bit and the middle bit of the kidney. Then we have collecting ducts. You have collecting ducts that drain into the pelvis, and then that drains into the ureter, and that goes into your bladder. So here is a nephron. You have about 1 million nephrons in each kidney, so they're microscopic structures. Just going through what I talked about. So here we have the afferent arteriole here, which is bringing in high pressure blood, the glomerulus, the bed of capillaries that are leaky. We have the efferent arteriole, which is taking what's left that isn't filtered back to the body. We have lots of capillaries all the way around the nephron. And we have the Bowman's capsule here, which is capturing the filtrate. So there's Bowman's capsule, and then we've got our tubule. Our other bits and pieces, you don't need to necessarily remember these. We've got our proximal convoluted tubule, where we get most of the reabsorption of glucose occurring. We've got our descending loop of Henle, our ascending loop of Henle, our distal convoluted tubule, and then we've got our collecting duct over here. So, let's have a look at what's going through. I'll just fast forward through. We're mainly looking at water and salt in this one here. So I'll go through to the end here. We're not talking about glucose, because we are focusing in this presentation on the role of antidiuretic hormone. So if we have a look at what's happening here, we're looking mainly at salt and water in terms of what's going on here. So as you go down into the kidney, the concentration of salt increases. So we get more and more salt down here. What that means is we're going to get osmosis occurring. So as our filtrate passes down the loop of Henle, we're going to get a lot of water coming out of the filtrate because it's getting really salty. In osmosis, we get water going where there's more salt. The thing is though, to get this water moving, we need to have aquaporins present to increase that rate of flow. So aquaporins we talked about in terms of there being that protein with a channel and that allows water to pass through a lot faster than it normally would through cell membranes. We're also seeing salt is being moved out, so both sodium and chloride ions are being pushed out. That's done through active transport because there's a high salt concentration in the kidney anyway, so we need to pump that salt out. So we're using our pumps, our protein pumps in our cell membranes to push the sodium and chloride out. So just summarizing what's happening. So we've got ions, water, urea, amino acids, glucose. They're filtered out from the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule, and that's called the filtrate. Proteins and also blood cells don't filter out because they're too big to pass between the walls of the capillary. We reabsorb useful materials from the filtrate as they pass through the nephron, and there's lots of nephrons in each kidney because that gives us a large surface area for the exchange to occur over. For osmoregulation, we need a lot of control over what is being reabsorbed from the filtrate. About 99% of the water is reabsorbed through the collecting ducts. But this can be moderated, so if you drink an awful lot of water, you're not going to reabsorb as much because you want to get rid of that excess water. Similarly, if you eat a lot of salty food, you want to get rid of that excess salt from your body so that it'll stay in the filtrate and then be passed through into the urine. Hormones are involved in this control. And the hormones are released from the pituitary and also from the kidneys themselves. So the main hormone we've got to talk about is antidiuretic hormone, or ADH. It's also known as vasopressin. It's made in the hypothalamus, which is in our brain. We've talked about the hypothalamus before. And it's stored in the pituitary gland, the back of the pituitary gland, so back here. Now, depending on how much water you need to reabsorb, that will moderate how much antidiuretic hormone you have flowing through your body. So a diuretic makes you wee a lot. Antidiuretic hormone will stop you from weeing, so it reduces the amount of urine that you produce. So, if you release more antidiuretic hormone, what happens is that leads to more aquaporins being found in the cell membranes of the cells on the walls of the convoluted tubule and also the collecting duct. What that means is more water will be reabsorbed from the filtrate and less water will be present in the urine. So high concentration of antidiuretic hormone reduces the amount of water present in your urine and maintains a lot more water in your body. So because water can move through a lot faster, because there's more aquaporins, there's more water channels for the water to pass through, this will reduce the concentration of solutes in your blood. What that means is you'll have more water flowing through your blood. And when we're looking at concentration, we're comparing water to what's dissolved in it. So if you've got more water, you'll have a lower concentration. This is a negative feedback loop, because once we get back to having the right amount of water sitting around in our blood, which maintains the concentration of specific things like ions and glucose and so on, then the amount of antidiuretic hormone would reduce back to a regular level. So how does osmoregulation link to blood volume and pressure? So osmotic pressure plays an important role in many processes like reabsorption in the kidneys, but also tissue fluid production and flowing over cells, flow through the lymphatic system, and movement of blood into and out of capillaries. So if we affect the amount of water in the body, we're going to affect the blood volume. If we have more water in the body, we have more volume. If we have less water in the body, we have less volume. Now, if we have more volume, there's going to be a higher amount of pressure because we're pushing more stuff around, and it's going to be pushing against the walls of things like blood vessels at a higher amount. So more volume equals more blood pressure. So antidiuretic hormone is directly involved in things like moderating blood pressure, because if we have too much water in our body, then we're going to have too high a blood pressure. So we need to reduce the amount of water that we would have present. The way you would do that is you reduce the amount of antidiuretic hormone, which means you'll have more water flowing through the tubules and not being reabsorbed from the kidneys, so it'll pass into your urine and then pass out of your body. So this is an example where we have an interplay between the nervous and the endocrine system. We have stretch receptors in our circulatory system, so these are mechanoreceptors, and they detect a lowering of blood pressure, for example, which means that you have less blood in your flowing through your circulatory system than you should. So a nervous message gets sent from those receptors to the hypothalamus in your brain, and that causes the hypothalamus to release the antidiuretic hormone that's stored in the anterior pituitary. The antidiuretic hormone does a couple of things. It stimulates vasoconstriction, but also what we've been talking about in terms of the reabsorption of water, so the production of more aquaporins, so that more water is reabsorbed from the convoluted tubules and the collecting ducts. Vasoconstriction we talked about when we talked about temperature regulation. Vasoconstriction means you turn on muscles at the start of capillaries flowing in places like your skin so that less blood goes there. It gets redirected back into your body. The effect of this is it sends more blood back into your body and through your kidneys so that it can then go back into your circulatory system. This regulation leads to an increase in blood volume, and that will increase the blood pressure. And when our blood pressure returns to normal levels, then we're going to reduce our amount of antidiuretic hormone being released. So it's a negative feedback system. So let's do our check. So describe the role of antidiuretic hormone in osmoregulation, discuss the links between osmoregulation, blood volume, and blood pressure, explain how the nervous and endocrine systems work independently or together to enable osmoregulation. Today on Flippin Science, we looked at osmoregulation. That's the Flippin Science today. See ya!